So, today I'm really excited to share with you a fantastic new opportunity to transform the operating system of business. Think maybe moving from analog to digital, maybe from the horse and cart to the electric vehicle. That level of transformation about the role of business in our society and economy. We're well overdue this reset. Milton Friedman in 1970 came up with the proposition, the purpose of business is to maximize returns for shareholders. I think we can see where that's got us. Now we are left with existential issues, and business is not just part of the solution, it has been a large part of the problem. In fact, the Carbon Disclosure Project reckon that only 100 companies are responsible for 70% of all the carbon emissions since 1988. So imagine if we could transform the operating system of business, what a ripple effect that could have on our air, our environment, our society, and our economy. And this sort of transformation from, say, shareholder primacy to what we could consider impact primacy, it's not totally new. We know there are many developments around sustainability products and services and reporting requirements, all of which are great and are really moving in the right direction. But they don't fundamentally change the DNA of business. But with the stroke of a pen, a European Union pen, this could happen. So what the European Union are proposing is to look at corporate sustainability law and introduce a concept called the duty of care, which I think is a beautifully named idea. This duty of care would obligate directors of boards and companies and the management in the C-suite to consider the implications and the impact of the decisions they make, the operations they run, on all those who are affected by it. And that's not just in the short run for the immediate impact, but in the medium and long run. So you start to see the role of business is about creating a different future for people that they are not actually in touch with at the moment. That is exciting and fundamental. And when we heard about this, we quickly created what was called an interdependence coalition. About 540 organizations, companies, progressive leaders, advocates, champions got together, and we used our collective voice to say to the European Union, this is a brilliant idea, please hold on to this duty of care as you take this whole legislative change through the process. We were told, it's unlikely, I don't expect too much, this is very, on the edge, don't think we're going to get that through, but you can try. And so we took this to the European Parliament, and against the odds, they voted this to stay in the text. Now it sits with the 27 member states to agree a legislative set of words with the Commission and the European Parliament. And here we have hit some resistance. And I think it's useful if I share with you maybe the three key reasons that we're seeing for the resistance, because it gives you a sense of the legacy that business is coming with, this historical 50 years of financial focus that we really are struggling to leave behind us. And this is what I think is playing out in member states' concerns. The first one is to say, we don't need to make this mandatory. Surely this could be voluntary. It's perfectly good enough that companies who want to do this can think about it. Well, if you see on this donut here, we have 23 million businesses roughly in Europe. And 3 million of those, to a more or less formal extent, are operating a duty of care. But we can't wait for the 20 million others to come on board. It could take way longer than we have. We know we're up against the clock. We have Paris agreements to meet. We have societal injustices to deal with. We can't wait for everybody to go at the pace of the slowest. So I'm afraid we reject that argument and say, use the evidence from the 3 million. And that leads on to the second charge that is being given to resist this duty of care. Businesses in Europe are saying it will be anti-competitive. We will lose out. Businesses in China, US, somewhere other places where this is not obligatory will benefit and will be left behind. Well, again, we'd actually reverse that argument and say, well, if you look at a cohort of the businesses in that 3 million, you will see they have way outperformed their compatriots, as you might say. Their revenue growth is averaging double digits and often in teens from 2016 to 2022, year on year, double-digit growth, which is above and beyond their competitors. The workforce growth is 12%, and they're holding on to their workforce because the workforce so believe in what they're doing. And then we also see that actually the cost of capital to these organizations is often reduced because the investors see that by the fact that these businesses are considering their holistic impact, they're actually de-risking their own investment and are more likely to create the impacts that they so seek. So we, secondly, reject that argument as well. The third argument is a bit more philosophical. This is not the role of the European Union to dictate what corporate law should look like in our country. Well, yes and no. I think the argument here is the European Union is a single market, and the single market has rules for a level playing field that all companies and all countries have to abide by. And that is to design an economy that has got certain principles and guidelines and a vision of the future, which in this case is determined by the European Green Deal. So it seems totally appropriate that the European Union would put in place an overarching principle of a duty of care, but which member states can then implement in their own ways with their own enforcement mechanisms to ensure that this is applied. And so again, I think we see that that argument doesn't really stack up either, but both institutional levels have a role to play. So you might be sitting here thinking, well, that's all going on in Brussels. And by the way, it's been going on for 3 years. We started this in 2020. And as I speak today, we are still waiting for the outcome of these negotiations between member states and the Parliament and the Commission. But actually, we don't have to wait for them. We have really important roles to play. Business is a man-made creation, and we have a role to create the economy that we want to see in the world. And so we mustn't just sit back and let the institutional players shape what we then decide to do, and we passively accept it. In fact, I think your roles are critical. And so I don't know if many of you here are entrepreneurs running maybe startups or early stage companies, or you are maybe leaders in more established companies. You have a fantastically important role to join the 3 million and adopt this duty of care and show how it can be done. You don't have to have all the answers, but you do have to be asking the right questions. That's what's demanded of a duty of care. And you can be part of that, and we would welcome that we build this 3 million to be 23 million as soon as we can. And then I think you also see policymakers. Maybe there are some policymakers in the room. Your voice is absolutely critical because you know what's at stake, and you have the power to shape what gets decided. And we ask you to use the evidence, the case, the proof of concept from these 3 million to influence those who will be in Brussels round the table deciding what it is that we agree on. Your voice is critical at this point. Academics and researchers and climate scientists, you give us the powerful information to show what is important for us to focus on. What are the priorities that business must be addressing? How can they address them? And then I think the business school researchers and academics can really show the evidence that this is better business too and makes sense for all. Maybe some of you are teachers. I know my son is a teacher, and he comes back and regularly says, the children in his class are saying, why is the future in such a mess? Who's deciding all of this? Why can't we make it good again? What's stopping us? Very important questions. These are going on in the classroom, but are they going on in the boardroom? This is the future generation of the workforce. You need to be hearing their voice, and they need to be hearing the voice of business and holding them to account for the future that we're creating. And then lastly, there's us as individuals, as groups, as members of society. We have a huge potential to influence and shape what we are, what we create in our way of our economy. We have our wallet. Who do we spend money with? We have our voice and our vote. Who do we vote in to change laws and introduce policies that will be really beneficial for future generations? We have our talents. Where do we go to work? Who do we offer that to? We have so many ways that we can shape and influence our economy, and we must do that because, as I say, business is not predetermined, a God-given feature. It's an economy-based societal initiative that we are all involved in making. But for business to really fulfill its potential and to unhook itself from the past, it absolutely has to have a vision of the future, and it needs a new operating code to do that. And that is the change that we can create, making this work for all of us, not just in a linear way for financial return. I don't know about you, but that's the most exciting thing I think we have to work on. Are you in with me? Yeah? Good. Thank you.